Lamberto Bava's Demons is this 1985 Italian horror film produced by Dario Argento. It features Urbano Barberini and Natasha Hovey in leading roles, and there is lots of heavy metal bands and hard rock bands on the soundtrack, such as Motley Crue, Accept, Billy Idol, Motorhead. Hey, so I couldn't resist including another classic, Italian horror classic in this 31 Days of Horror. I went with Lamberto Bava's probably most famous horror movie, Demons, from 1985. What can I say? It's a crazy movie. Quite bloody and gory. It has an interesting premise which gets thrown out to make room for running around and screaming and metal music. The soundtrack is pretty amazing. It's got some of 1980s most popular, biggest names like Billy Idol and Motley Crue. There is, I think, Accept is on it. There's a few bands, Motorhead. It's a very period soundtrack. Then the costumes as well are very period. I think Demons today gains new fans because there is that 80s nostalgia, and Demons embodies that shallow 80s horror aesthetic, teen-oriented horror really well. Considering it comes from Dario Argento, it's actually quite a boneheaded movie which focuses on action and gore, and there is not so much suspense in it really. It's more about just straight on, demons chasing characters. So the basic plot outline, in case you don't know it, it starts out with these two young students, two girls. They are cutting class, and in the metro they run into this guy who wears this weird half mask, this metal mask, and he's distributing tickets to a preview. And it doesn't say what sort of movie it is, and the cinema itself, the movie house, seems to have popped out of nowhere in the city. None of the people seem to have been there before. And once they go in there, it's this huge old-fashioned cinema with lots of seats, and the movie is obviously a horror film. And there is a movie within the movie which is really fun because they actually went all out and produced like a short film which you see screened inside that cinema, and it's quite violent as well, and it features a lot of actors you will know from other Lamberto Bava movies, from previous movies and the ones he would direct later for TV. There is that mask, and once you get scratched with it, then you become a demon, so there is that infection spreading inside the cinema, and it kind of goes more two-dimensional nuts from there. So there is zero characterization. Doesn't matter whether you watch the English or the Italian version, all dialogue is really simple and quite redundant. You don't really need to understand what they're saying because it's all very, very basic. There is lots of screaming, lots of practical effects and makeup, which is why this film is so beloved as well. The practical effects are really good. Sometimes they're shot in a mercilessly static way, in just very static close-ups, which kind of dates the film a little bit, but otherwise it's good fun. The film is quite fast-paced and doesn't outstay its welcome. It's just barely 90 minutes long, so there is nothing to complain about there. There is an epic finale. Every time I watch Demons, I'm impressed. I keep forgetting just what a massacre there is towards the end of the film. The ending makes no sense whatsoever. It obviously opens doors for a sequel, which did come the following year or the year after. But the sequel completely disregards the first movie, and it starts all, from zero. It starts from... The second movie is basically like the remake of the first one, just with more blue light instead of red light, and a little bit less violence. Both movies are kind of interchangeable. Even about 3 or 4 actors are the same in both movies, but they play completely different, unrelated characters. So this whole idea of a sequel which would actually latch onto the events of the first movie never really caught on with Italian horror. If you think between Zombie 2 and Zombie 3, or Zombie 3 and Zombie 4, there is no character that we could follow, and neither is the case with Demons 1 and 2. I've got here this vintage Arrow DVD, but there has recently been at least one UHD or 2 UHD releases of this movie, and The great thing about Demons is cinematography. I mean, you can forget the story, you can forget believability. It's just trash, but fun trash. But cinematography is really good for such a low budget movie. There is lots of interesting camera angles, and the film is quite well put together. The editor of the first Demons, the supervising editor, was Dario Argento's regular editor, Franco Fraticelli, who's cut all of Dario's most famous movies, starting from his first one all the way through to Tenebrae. All his classics were cut by Fraticelli. He does a good job assembling the footage. Demons has a jumble quality, continuity isn't always great, and you don't really get to stick with one character to follow it. So there is always that feeling like it's a bit, you know, like a kind of, it should be like an ensemble movie, but none of the actors really stand out. Everybody's quite wooden and flat, so but as a comic book, as a kind of juvenile fun horror film, it's a good one. It's a good movie to enjoy with a company of friends, because then it's, you know, it becomes a bit more entertaining. You can riff on some of the ridiculous dialogue and things. So really quite an epic movie, surprisingly good production values. And obviously Dario Argento's name on top of it helped market it. And I think in Italy, when the film came out, it actually, in terms of box office returns in Italy, it beat the original The Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Can you imagine that? And it did all right overseas as well. So what can I say? For a Halloween movie, it's not a bad one. There is lots of little atmospheric touches here and there, which when you come back to revisit this film, they're there for you to enjoy, even though the overall structure is a bit chaotic. It took several people to write that movie, and it really shows. I wouldn't say this is the best Lamberto Bava movie, but it's his most famous one, because it's where Dario Argento threw a bit more budget at him, and they went out of their way to make it look, you know, to make it appeal to like a wider audience, and I think it kind of all worked out. So in terms of actors, like the main four protagonists are just young, no-name actors who's never really had much of careers. They look more like models. They're very good-looking kids, and they've been in a couple of movies, but nothing major there. And then in supporting parts, you get some veteran actors, like Stelio Candeli shows up. Stelio Candeli, he's been in a few classics. He's been in Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires, for example. Then he was in this giallo set in Haiti, Tropic of Cancer. He's in that one, and he had the lead role in that really sleazy movie from Luigi Bazzella. Was it Nude for Satan? And then there is Giretta in her iconic role as this call girl who gets to be the first demon, and she's Giretta was also in Bruno Mattei's nice, amusing Terminator ripoff, Shocking Dark, and she was in Fulci's Murder Rock, and it's always nice to see her show up. She doesn't get that much screen time, but her character is pretty iconic, and I think that role for her has become pretty iconic. And of course we have to mention Michele Soavi. Now, he's not much of an actor, but he's photogenic, and it's good to see him when he pops up, because he's been in so many movies. He was in a bunch of Joe D'Amato films. He was in Fulci's Gates of Hell. You see him in a number of... he also shows up in his own movies in very brief parts. He was in Atlantis Interceptors, and here he has this cool kind of silent role as this masked guy, giving out these preview tickets, and then he's also within the movie. So it's kind of interesting to see him as the rising star. He was the final Italian horror director to make it big before the industry crumbled in the late 80s, early 90s. So Demons is definitely worth a look at least once. For all its infantile brainlessness, it's full of effects. It's full of imaginative, stylish camera angles, and there is quite an epic finale for a film of its vintage. It's a lot of fun, and I would say horror fans are more likely to enjoy it than not. So that was day 25.